Everybody loves transformation stories where someone has a horrible life of struggle and addiction and trauma, and then one good thing happens and everything is happy ever after. But don't listen to that kind of sugar-coated narrative. It sounds good on social media or on TV, but it helps no one who is very much trying to free themselves from the trauma-driven problems of their past. The reality, and reality is healing, the reality is that the wounds that made you vulnerable to all those problems in the first place are still wounds. They're still there after the problems begin to lift. And there's still the loneliness, the fear, the physical exhaustion that comes with surviving trauma. There's still the problem of feeling like you belong. There's still the problem of grief for all that you lost and the fear that the basic good things in life will never be yours. And I know this phase of healing very well because I lived it. And the letter I'm going to answer today, which is from a woman I'll call Bridget, requires a very heartfelt answer. It's a little hard to hear. You can stay with me if you choose. You might benefit from hearing my advice to her, or you might not. But for Bridget, I've got to tell the truth about how I survived that dark period between pre-recovery and the things that actually changed for the better. There was this gap in between that was very, very hard. And here's what Bridget writes. Dear Anna, I'm writing because I'm feeling frustrated and resentful at people and in society at large. Oh yeah. Got my fairy pencil. I'm going to circle things I want to come back to on a second reading, but let's see what's going on here. I'm a 30-year-old woman. All the people I know are settling down. A lot are getting married and having children. Anytime I hear another person is settling down or getting a house, pregnant, etc., I feel angry and resentful. I've been turning to your daily practice to help figure out why. I wonder if I'm jealous and that perhaps I should start looking for a husband and think about children, etc. But it kind of seems like I'm more jealous of the fact that all these people are idiots and they just get to do whatever they want and nothing bad ever happens to them. I have had such a hard life and I've worked so hard in trying to be a good person, making amends to people, not drinking, living healthily, taking accountability, and trying to be stable. It blows my mind that all these people who have such bad habits, a lot of them are alcoholics or addicted to weed, they have unstable relationships where they're mad all the time, or just have no ability to self-reflect. They're managing to find these people who are willing to stick around in their mess. I'm just like, damn, here I am trying to work on my CPTSD meltdowns. But then I hear a story from a coworker who threw a pot at her boyfriend in front of her kid, but they're all still together and no one is holding her accountable, and she can just go on her merry way. I just feel like I'm working on being a better person, but it's made me more alone than when I was a wreck. When I was a wreck, I always had guys to talk to or who wanted to marry me. But now I have no one, and I'm watching all these people I knew just being wrecks and still getting to not be alone. I feel like my recovery is making me alone. I honestly feel at a loss for what to do. I feel like I'm surrounded by a crazy world, and my rejection of it and trying to not take part in its craziness is making me so alone, and I feel so angry about that. I feel angry at my own recovery. I feel like I should have just never tried to get better and just stayed effed up and drunk. At least then I would have still had my old boyfriend, even though that relationship sucked. Looking around, I feel like it just doesn't matter. I could have had that boyfriend, had his kids, been an abusive POS mom, and no one would even care. I don't know what to do with this resentment toward all of these people just doing whatever they want, never having to change and still ending up with a family or a house or whatever else kind of blessing. And that is it from Bridget. All right, Bridget. I was really reluctant to respond to this because I have to talk about something that's fairly private to me, which is my spirituality. I talk a little bit about it. But I recognize exactly what you're talking about. I've had very similar thoughts. And I'm over on the other side of it now. And I have a sense of what it takes to get there. And in my experience, what's happening here is you're going through a very hard time. This is like depression and trauma talking. It sounds like trauma talking. It also sounds like the reasoning of trauma. Like, being alone is so bad, I could at least be in a relationship throwing pots and know, I'd still have the person. I think that's the thing that's missing for you right now is you're alone. And alone is hard. And alone almost always comes along with trauma. And I know what you mean. I remember comparing myself to people who, they seemed just as effed up as I was, and they got to have somebody. And I don't really know why, but I'll tell you this, they're not really with those people anymore in most cases. Nothing is what you think. It's really not this world where everybody's just terrible and getting away with it, and you're all by yourself, not able to form a good relationship. Let's just look at this factually. The rage that you have right now is totally understandable, but guess what? It's not like attractive for a relationship, and that's for good reason. You are a bundle of nerves right now. There's likely to be painful fallout from anybody who tries to get close to you right now. And I'm just being straight with you because I think it should be comforting. It's like, look, there's a reason. You're still having your feelings about everything. You're still having feelings, and this is a very good time not to be in a relationship. And it's okay to be single at 30. I had a temporary, very short-term marriage in my mid to late 30s, had some kids in that marriage, then raised them, as a divorced mom, got married again right around my 50th birthday. So go figure. And there were many times when I was like, why does this have to be so hard for me? I knew people who had been through worse, and it just wasn't so hard for them to put it together. My answer is, I think there's an injury, and different people have a different amount of injury where it's very hard to connect. Your red flag detector is broken, right? When you grow up traumatized, all of that was kind of like gaslit out of you. You don't know how to detect the problems in people. There's a sense of numbness around the effect that we have on other people. And that's a really unfortunate thing. When you talk about this stuff, the drinking and what sounds like emotional dysregulation, you were sort of saying other people get to throw the pot. That's emotional dysregulation. Well, emotional dysregulation, the people who will put up with it usually have serious issues as partners too. And so I totally understand, just like, could I just have a temporary fix where somebody sits by my side and holds me and keeps me from flying away, who keeps me alive while I am going through this really hard time inside. I understand the desire for that, but in a weird way, it's so much better that you don't have that because it distracts you from the part that needs to grow in you, for the part of you that needs to see reality and adjust to it. Those of us who had trauma as kids, we get stalled in our development. We don't understand all the time how to read the room. We don't understand, like, how do you have this conversation? How do I tell if somebody's safe or good or not? When all of that is lost, there's kind of only one way that relationships can turn out, unless just by some crazy thing, some incredible person comes along and just loves you anyway. But the reality is, people who are in a good place to give love, they are in a good place to give love because they can see more clearly what's going on, and they can spot somebody who's in a troubled place right now. Now, you're not by definition a troubled person. You are in a troubled place. You've been going through a really hard time. You're pretty unhealed right now. Now, I detect in your letter that you got sober and it doesn't seem fair, and it should get happier. And alcohol was never my thing, but I was like a 12-step person for 12 years. And when my first marriage ended, I gave up all recovery. I just kind of I was like, well, obviously that was stupid. I had this strong cynicism. I lost all my faith in a higher power, and at first it was okay. And then it just got really, really bleak. And the decisions I was making were wronger than they'd ever been. And trouble ensued, and people got hurt. Especially me, not especially me, other people got hurt even worse. My kids were hurt by it. I knew I had to never do that again. I knew I never had to do that again. I knew I had to, people are like, I'll heal and then I'll have a nice relationship. But how do you heal? People talk about it like it's just like la-di-da, you just grab it off the shelf and plug it in. It's not like that. But the thing is, I do know how to heal. And I teach a lot of people what worked for me. And I know you said here that you've been using my daily practice, but because you're telling me all this resentment, I'm just going to say this goes in your daily practice. For people who haven't done it before, this is the foundational technique that I started doing 30 years ago that helped me to get my mind and my spirits back and, be able to focus and regulate my emotions. And it put me on a level playing field to start solving the problems in my life. And it does that for a lot of people. And the only way to find out if it does it for you is to give it a try. It's free. I have a free course. You can learn it in my book, Re-Regulated, available through Amazon and online sellers everywhere. You can get the book. There's a link to that down in the description section. But if you just want to learn the technique, you can get that in my free course, The Daily Practice. I lead calls on Zoom twice a week. Like, get in here, come work that daily practice and learn the fine nuances of it. Some people, when they're new, they come to it like, I'll just do this thing, everything will change. But what the daily practice is for is it's for facing so that you can be rid of the toxic thoughts and feelings that are operating, that are sort of running the show in your life. And we don't know which ones are the toxic ones and which ones are just random, anxieties and hurts. So we put it all on paper, and then through basically a spiritual intention, we ask for it to be removed, and we rest our minds and nervous systems in meditation for a while. And it's the hardest part of my job is trying to convince people that something that simple could be helpful. Because everybody's been working so hard trying this thing and that thing and that thing and that thing and, maybe feeling a little better for a while, but today, not so much, and haven't found the solution yet. So trying to convince people, just like relax a little bit. You can pick up those other things later. Today, just try this thing I'm showing you, and you can start to release all the jammed up thoughts and feelings. I now know that literally, the trauma wound makes it hard to process thoughts and feelings that are negative. So it is what it feels like. There's just like a lot of noise in there. And the noise has a lot of, the structure of it. It's pain, it's anxiety about the future, it's rage at how, unjust everything has been. And it colors your vision of everything because your mind can't process it and make it a memory of what happened. It's like an active thing dictating how you perceive the world. So everything can change when you know how to get free of this. And it's not like magic. It comes back. A lot of the thoughts and feelings will come back tomorrow or tonight, and you write them again. And after a while, almost everything gets lifted, and it's not really a concern anymore. And sometimes the thing that was bothering you doesn't exist anymore. I always call it's like a toothbrush. You just keep brushing your teeth. You don't say, look, I brushed them in 1972. I'm good now. No. We do it twice a day. And likewise, we do this daily practice twice a day. Now, if you come in, we have this membership program. And I'm sure you've heard of it if you do the daily practice. We email people and invite them. But we have this membership program that includes access to this Facebook group where people can talk. And the people who have done the daily practice for a long time, they lead peer-led calls. And we've got like dozens of them throughout the week. And the people who really make progress on trauma, trauma it's partly irrational, it's partly physiological. Like, how do you even get at it? And I just find you get at it through two things: tools that keep you consistently, steadily facing what the stress is and moving it out. That's the first thing. And the second thing is staying connected to other people who get it, who are also walking this path of healing and who support you in keeping that mindset that you might be like so resentful about something right now, but we actually we're not all resentful at the same time. And we're mindful of misery loves company, but when we love misery together, everybody's miserable. And so when some people are sort of buoyed up, they can just sort of say, come on, let's sit down. Let's write. You want to read it to me after you're done? There's a way that we can concretely support each other to process those thoughts and not have to talk about them, and therefore not to have to believe in them. It doesn't dictate what you can say or what you can believe. There are things that are appropriate to say and believe, but when you grew up with trauma, there's way too much in there. It's like a hoarder house in your head, There's good stuff in there, but there's all this other stuff too. And so when we just put it all outside and let it get rinsed off a couple times a day, we can take back what's useful to us and let the rest just be rinsed downstream. Let it go. I don't like to say let it go. That phrase, let it go, it doesn't apply to complex PTSD. It's not just like, oh, I was just holding on to it. It's like, it's like neurologically, psychologically, physiologically, it's like dug into the way that I'm built at this point. So I can't just decide to let it go, but I can put it into words, face it, and keep doing this. It's a structured way to allow it to just move on, to just leave your life. Believe me, I get it. I get the problem of letting go just being way too tall in order. People who don't have what we have could not possibly understand. There's stuff that's from pre-language days, trauma that's just in there. It's just like in the way the cortisol in your body reacts to things. The parts of your brain just go, they just leap into motion. It's not like you're under control from that, but through practices that help you get re-regulated from the neurologically dysregulating stress that we often are in, it turns out we get grooved into being dysregulated all the time as a result of trauma, or can. And so we ungroove it. We start grooving ourselves into getting re-regulated again. And this is the level playing field. The level playing field, it's not just like opportunities and empowerment and stuff. It's just having a calm mind that can pay attention and notice, there's a red flag. Or, this is an opportunity I think I would like to, try for. Because when you have trauma, when it's active, you can't detect those things, and they all just, the trouble gets in, the opportunity slips away, right? So it can get a lot better. So you're right at the point where persevering really matters and going deeper really matters. And I guess the part that's very personal to me, and a lot of people who watch, they don't like it when I get spiritual. If you don't like spiritual stuff, just stop watching right now and move right along. There's plenty of other videos to watch. But I'll tell you what is healing from this, the anger about the hand of cards I'd been dealt, that resentment at God, was very hard for me to, use tools to free myself of it. It was a spiritual process. And it came from a certain kind of prayer that I have only ever been able to pray when the chips were entirely down, when I was completely out of options, literally laying on my face on the living room floor crying, going, I just don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know why this keeps happening. And in that moment, even when I didn't even believe in God anymore, when I asked, could you just show me what to do? It's not like anything lit on fire or anything, but a calmness came to me. And I can think of a couple of the hardest times in my life when calmness coming to me was a great miracle. The distress was so great and so unbearable. And then calmness came and I could sort of sleep and I could think. And if you can sleep and you can think, opportunity has appeared for something different. And that calmness, over the years, calm can mean a lot of things, but the calmness that set me free to really start healing is the end of desperation, to just feel like there is a presence with me, there's a higher power who's with me, who's on my side, who is like right here with me, trying to help me just like effortlessly move in the proper direction. And if I can have a little bit of stillness in my mind, I may start to understand and what is the direction? And what would I do there? What does it look like? And when it happens, it's usually pretty subtle. It's subtle, but you just find yourself, you're taking constructive action again. And this resentment, it has to go somewhere. You know that all of this resentment can go in your daily practice. I'm resentful at God because I have fear. All these people who are whack get to have all the relationship things and I don't. Fear I'm unworthy somehow. Fear life is just unfair. Fear I'm being punished. I'm just making up what might be your fears in this. But it's got to be faced, and it's got to be faced a couple times a day. And if you're going to do this, you're really going to need to meditate afterwards. It's an intensive thing to face what the fears are, just to name them. You don't have to do anything about them when you sit and do the daily practice. You're just naming them and you're writing them. And everybody who's watching and you don't know what it is, I just really strongly ask you, instead of trying to take this sort of like half version of training on how to do it, I don't want you to try it and get a bad result because you didn't really know how to do it and then give up. I want you to know how to do it. So please either get my book, Re-Regulated, or sign up for the free course and, watch the videos. Some people prefer the videos. Some people prefer an audiobook or a book. And I think for me, I like the book the best. I just want to be able to see. I want to see every FAQ, There's like 25 or more of them about why do we say fear? How come it's just fear and resentment? How long am I supposed to meditate? And so that's all documented there. So I used to think I was just some weirdo whose life completely transformed very quickly because I was using this technique. And I would show it to people, and occasionally people would benefit. There was something about me teaching it on YouTube that just, the technique found the people who would benefit from it and continues to do so. And there are literally like thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who have used this technique, and many of them continue to do it twice a day. It's a joy because, I was just visiting New York City. I booked a room, I put an email out, and a whole bunch of people showed up. Over 50 people just came and sat and wrote and meditated with me, and we talked about it. People I'd never met before, but they learned about it. And I got to hear their experiences of getting great relief from it. And then a few people, they were really frustrated with it. They wanted to know literally, but why does it work? And it's one of those things, it's a little bit like, I don't know exactly why. I know kind of why. I've studied as much as I can. Dr. James Pennebaker, who studied expressive writing and the therapeutic value of writing, has looked at what we're doing and thinks it's really cool, has endorsed the book. And he's done a lot of peer-reviewed studies, thousands, a couple thousand peer-reviewed studies have been done on his work to show there really is a therapeutic value in writing. And there's ample evidence that there's therapeutic value in meditating. So if we go on the premise that the childhood PTSD, a main component of it, a significant component of it is that neurologically we're off, we're dysregulated neurologically, and we need to get re-regulated, and that we're carrying trauma in our bodies and in our minds, and we need to get it out, then it just makes sense that this is a very simple approach to doing that. It might not be the end-all be-all of what you need. You can always also do other things, see professionals, try medications, use specific techniques outside of this. But this is a free and simple way that every day, twice a day, you can start to rinse off the residue of the day. There's like an outer residue of what you go through during the day and while you sleep, and there's an inner residue that just sort of kicks up. These old memories and feelings come up out of nowhere, and you find yourself in a weird mood and you don't know why. And we get into these reflexive reactions to things that push people away. So I'm willing to wager the amount of distress that you're in has your nervous system in a state that whether or not people can articulate it to you or are consciously aware of it, we can feel other people's nervous systems. And so, maybe it's what people call vibes or energy or but we can feel each other's nervous system state. And that's why some people, we get around them and we feel really peaceful or silly. And some people, we get around them and it's just like, there's a lot going on. It feels kind of angry. It feels like it's going to blow. And it causes us to, if we're attuned to ourselves, it causes us to pull back a little bit. That is definitely what was going on with me when I was in my great long dark night of the soul. I've had a few, but that's what was going on. And I was like, why? It's the irony, it's just like if you just had people to come be your friend at that time, it would help so much. And yet you can't. And yet you can't. And that for me is where my spirituality really developed, is when I just didn't have any people really to help me with what I was going through. And I turned to a higher power. That's the truth. And it helped tremendously. And there's been many ways that I sort of hoped I could turn to a higher power and get help with certain things. And I didn't get what I wanted, but it's the nature. I've just noticed some prayers get answered and some don't. And the ones that have tended to be answered for me were the ones where the spirit of it was, will you just show me, can you help me out? And can you show me how I should proceed here? That's a pretty good solid prayer that tends to get answered, not for specific outcomes, because, we don't know. We may not know right now what the best outcome is, but we need to know how to proceed. So I hope that helps you. Persevere, come to the call. Send me a DM if you come to the Zoom call for the daily practice calls that I do, and tell me it's you. I'd like to hear from you and how it's going. I send my love. If anybody would like to get going with the daily practice, here's the free course right here. And you can sign up and learn it in about an hour. And you will get an email about joining calls with me. I'll see you very soon.